Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode. We're back again for part two of Period Sis featuring Coco the Conversational Freak. Again, I know we've done a whole lot of conversations recently about relationships, and we just did get back to talking about the box with Coco in part one, but we're digging back into the tales of womanhood with the journeys of things that are completely out of our control, but also things that involve the wellness of us. And so this episode, we are speaking to Coco's journey with endometriosis. And I'm super excited. Coco, I know you have a story as well to share with that. So welcome again, Coco, to Period Sis. Where do we start with this? Where were you introduced? When were you diagnosed? When did you feel like, okay, I'm experiencing something that is not normal? What did that look like?
So when I was 21, I'm 28 now. For context, I was 21, and I would get like these sharp pains up my butt. Like it, it, it was literally, I would be at work and I would get so stiff trying not to like jump out of my seat. Not like a sexual, ooh, it's like a penis. This kind of feel okay. No, it hurt really bad, like a
Okay.
stabbing pain. And I would get like sharp pains on my ovaries, which I do have PCOS as well, but this was like a different, it was just so different. And my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was about 23. So
Okay.
I'm like, oh damn, I got butt cancer. I thought I had cancer. So I would go to the I literally kept going to different doctors. And my primary at the time, I switched, told me to drink this mother. He told me to drink Metamucil because I needed more fiber.
Oh, so he thought you were constipated. You just came in. Can you share exactly what you told your primary care? Like, what did you tell him for him to assume it was constipation, essentially?
So I said to him, I keep getting these sharp pains shooting up my butt. And sometimes, like, I get a lot of pains, like, in my ovaries. So he thought, and he's like, well, how long would they last? They were so sporadic and all over the place. I really couldn't say, well, it happens only in the evenings. It happens only, it was all over the place. So he thought I had like a combination of gas and constipation. And I'm just like,
Okay.
again, you have to know your body. I'm like, I know for sure this is not it. So I went to another doctor, and this is something women with endometriosis get misdiagnosed with is pelvic inflammatory disease.
So we've actually had someone on the pod to speak about that exactly. So, but explain that and why do you believe they get the misdiagnosis? What similarities do they have?
So a lot of times when you have inflammation in your abdominal area, when it's closer like to the pelvis and it's like constant, like the symptoms are very similar. So, because
Mm.
one mistake I was making was I was not tracking my periods in terms of I wasn't
Okay.
tracking the pain, like what times, how many days, like after each other, all of that. So, I started doing that and I started noticing I would get those pains closer to when my period was. So, that was kind of like the key where it's just like, huh. So, this probably has to do with your period and the fact that you're on birth control. Because I love to have sex, but I ain't trying to have no baby. So it was kind of like, okay, let's see what's going on. I finally got a good doctor, and she was like, okay, basically from what you're telling us, they did ultrasound. They were like, you do have endometriosis, but we don't know what stage. And the only way they can determine what stage it is with a small surgical procedure.
Wait, so there's stages of endometriosis? Do you know what those stages are, or like if like what's more severe than the other? Like, is there a calm? I guess I don't know. What are the stages of endometriosis?
So basically, let's start off with the base of like what is endometriosis. So basically, you have
There we
this
go.
tissue. in your uterus called endometrium. Endometriosis is when that tissue is growing outside of your uterus. It can actually grow on your fallopian tubes, your ovaries. So the different stages are basically like the different severities of the scarring.
Okay.
So the only
Okay.
way that they could do it is with a procedure called, I'm about to butcher this, lap. It's a laparoscopic something. They basically go in and they see like where the scarring is, how much of it there is, and all of that, and they try to clean out as much scarring as possible. But the bad part
Okay.
about that is they can't stop it from doing it again.
You mentioned the ovaries, the fallopian tubes. So endometriosis does have an effect on fertility,
Oh,
correct?
yes, 100%. Like, I had to talk to my doctor, was like, I know you're only 26, but you should start thinking about like what fertility will look like for you, because I was kind of hesitant on the surgery because I'm like, do I want to go under the knife with it possibly not even doing anything? Now I have these scars and I went through all of this. And they're like, well, do you want to freeze your eggs? And I'm like, wait, I'm 26. Why am I having this conversation? Like, this is crazy. So for a long time, I would just say, oh, no, I don't want kids, because I didn't want anybody saying, well, oh, you have this. I didn't want to explain myself.
Mm. And when you say that, are you talking about family members, friends, partners? Who constantly is asking you the questions regarding childbearing?
I feel like whenever you're in a relationship, people are like, oh, when are you guys going to have kids? And you're 28 and blah, blah, blah. And they look at your age and where you are in life. And it's just like, well, why don't you have kids? My thing is, it was easier for me to say, I don't want to have kids than say, there's a possibility that I can't have kids.
Is that something that you fear the conversation of? I know that maybe you just say you don't, but like, it's crazy too, because like we always say, especially on this pod, like you never know what a woman's going through, but is that a conversation that you aren't fully comfortable having yet with a partner or with your family or the people that keep asking you when the fuck you gonna give them some kids?
So I used to shy away from the conversation because, the previous conversation we had, being in that gaslighting relationship, I brought up the concern a couple times and he just dismissed it and was like, why you think about that right now? Blah, blah, blah. And just like, I felt like, oh, okay. So then I never wanted to talk about it. And because we were together for so long, people are like, oh, when you guys having kids, you guys make such a great couple, not knowing that I can't even talk about having kids with this person. And this current relationship, we are very open. I've spoken about it. And he's just like, I got kids for the both of us. Like, he's very open, which made me more comfortable to have
Amazing.
that conversation. So sometimes being uncomfortable is because of the environment. So having
Mm.
that conversation now, I'm like, you know what? There's a possibility that it will be tough for me to have kids, but I've accepted the reality of it.
So then let's get into, if you're not having those conversations and you're not talking about, you're not essentially worried about even the conversation. You shared a story, and I want to know, how does endometriosis affect your sex life? And what can you tell us about that?
Get your tea, get your waters, okay?
Or your vodka.
Your vodka, tequila, whatever you prefer. I don't judge. So, we were about to have shower sex, popping. It was great.
Who is we? Wait, set the scene. This is that. Wait, not only set the scene, but this is again. You've already been diagnosed at this point, correct?
Oh, yes, yes.
So you're familiar at the changes or how it makes you feel, but you did also say it was sporadic. So talk to me about how it affects your sex life. And again, I know you have a story to go along with it.
So this story is gonna go from sexy to oh shit real quick. And this was my mistake of not listening to my body, because again, being in tune, my body will send me those signals of like, bitch, you trying it, but okay, go ahead if you want to. So we were just home. He was about to hop in the shower. And I'm just like, oh, why don't we just take a shower together? So it was great. hitting it from the back. You know that scene where you could just see the handprint on the glass, and it was just, it was, I was just like, okay, 50 Shades of Black. So I was like, okay, cool. All of a sudden, I started feeling like this cramping in my ovaries, and I'm just like, body, don't do this to me right now. Don't do this right now. And I was just like, okay, maybe it'll go away if I like kind of toot my butt up and just maybe if it hits a different angle. All of a sudden, I get hot, like passing out hot. And I was just like, you got to open the door. Like, you need to open the door. And he opens the door and he's just like, what's going on? And it just, the sharp pain, like I literally flop on the bed, like wet dog style without the shaking, like in a ball. And he's just frozen. And he's like, do I call the ambulance? I was like, no, it'll go away. And I'm crying, naked on the bed. And he don't know whether to touch me, anything. And that was his first time, like, ever seeing it happen. And it just kind of just released and went away. And endometriosis cost me a good shower sex session. But that was me not listening to my body.
I don't even think men are still even familiar with a period.
He didn't know at the time what it was.
No?
I think everything just happened so quickly. He just kind of looked at me like, did you just come on your period like while we were doing that? And I was like, no. What had happened was,
oh wait, he thought it was a period cramp? Wait. He thought it was a So can you, and not many men listen, but say another woman is listening who also has endometriosis or PCOS. Can you explain how you explain that to your partner and what their reaction was and what it means in the relationship? Like, what were his questions and concerns when you shared that with him? So first, I love overloading questions though. So let's start with, how did you explain what you were going through and what endometriosis does to you as a woman? How did you explain that to your partner?
I told him, like, I never told you this because it's never happened, but I had told him, I was just like, endometriosis is this. And he was just like, okay, okay, that makes sense. And I was like, sometimes during sex, it just causes like severe pain, but it only happens once in a blue moon. And I explained like the only way that you can kind of stop it in a sense was through like that surgery. And he was so supportive. Even like a few times after that during sex, he's just kind of like, you can set the pace because I ain't trying to, I ain't setting that off. You know what I mean? So he was very like, all right, okay, I'm going to just work with your body because what I just seen right now, I'm not trying to see that again. And with the PCOS doesn't really affect me in terms of sex. It's just, I know I have it and sometimes I get cramping. So it's nothing that gets in between like our relationship or our sex life or anything. But I did disclose it just so he knows fully and is aware. But he was he was very, very receptive. But with men, we really have to break it down in how it makes us feel, what our bodies go through. And I feel like what really just amplified it was because he saw it. I feel like men, you can explain it, but when they see it, they're like, oh shit, that really does look like it hurt. It does.
Is there any extra steps in care that he's taken outside of just letting you go with the pace? Is it also something that when you go to the doctor, you update him with any changes? How open are you with just explaining your health to him? Again, I know, like, even when it comes to testing, and you know, a lot of things we keep to ourselves. So I just want to know how you've excelled in those conversations regarding endometriosis with your partner.
Oh, I'm very open. Like like with everything from start to finish. Like what I'm going to the doctor for. My boobs hurt, I'm going to the doctor. My toe hurts a little bit, I'm going to the doctor for everything. I got insurance, that's what I paid for it for. So with him, I tell him every single thing because when I need that support, I need you to be caught up. When I'm in need of that support in that moment, I don't have time to sit down and explain it to you. So I just make sure that that communication is just there at all times, even to the point where, like, if I just come off my period or, like, even if it's a couple days, I have a routine for that to make sure my pH is back in, because having your period can throw it off. So you'd be like, oh, I'm gonna go down
100%.
on you. I'm like, I gotta get my pH right.
It's not back yet, right?
It's not where I want it to be for your festivities of eating.
So real quick then, share that. What does that routine look like? After your period, what do you do to get your pH back to where you're comfortable with him going down there?
Okay, so with me, with the endometriosis, it does cause, and being on birth control, let me say that, that combination causes my periods to last longer than usual. So there'll be times where I'm on my
Oh,
period for 3 weeks straight.
wait. Excuse me?
3 weeks
Wait.
straight.
So it for 3 weeks straight?
No chaser.
And so holy shit, so that means you go without sex for 3 weeks?
I didn't say that.
Oh, oh, you're running red lights. Got it, sis. No problem. I mean, listen, if I bled for 3 weeks straight, I would just be like, fuck it at this point. Okay, so wait. So you bleed for this extensive amount of time, and of course, we all know too, like then you have the discharge following, and again, an unbalanced pH. So then, what does your routine look like specifically as someone on birth control and with endometriosis? How do you get your pH back on track?
So what I personally do is, because I already like kind of have a routine, when my periods do last that long, what I'll do is I'll use more sensitive washes like honey pots. And because you're constantly wiping, I won't use, like, even during my period, I'm like, I change my wash to more sensitive because now my vagina is more sensitive. Instead of using rough paper towel, I'll use like a honey pot sensitive wipe. And then once my period is gone, I do like a boric acid suppository to make sure all that ish
Yes.
is out. And my vagina's like, thank you, sis.
It's crazy. So we have the balanced box. We for on official box owner, we now have boric acid suppositories, and it's something that has been a safe haven for specifically my co-founder, Sydney. You guys have heard her on an episode, and while of course it's also an after sex thing that you could do, especially if a man ejaculates in you, that can throw your pH off as well. It is, for those of you questioning, well, what is boric used for? Right after your period, they do say to use the boric acid suppositories to get your pH balanced. Now, let me ask you, how many days does that normally take before you realize your pH is back on track?
So sometimes they recommend 7 days. For me, I can, after 3 to 4 days, I don't need it anymore.
I agree. Okay. Okay, so you switch your washes to the sensitive wash. You use wipes instead of paper towels. And then also, I guess, again, I know we talked about this in the last episode a little bit, but do you do a bigger intake of water? What does your diet look like right after your period? Does that change as well?
So what I won't do is, even during my period, like I won't drink things that have caffeine in it. Caffeine makes your cramps worse. Like the caffeine and the sugar and all of that, like I try to stay away from it.
Girl, I'm gonna drink this coffee, okay? I am drinking this coffee. What is a little pain? Nah, bro, what the fuck is it? No. When decaffeinated coffee is like sugar-free sugar. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? No. Okay, so you steer clear of caffeine for the cramps. You do more water intake. Okay, I guess then normally again what we like to do before we get out of here too, I like to give our guests time to give advice to someone listening. You said there were ass pains and other things. I guess was there anything else, and what would you recommend if someone feels as though something is happening that's not right, but it's sporadic and blue moon like, the same way you maybe thought, maybe I ate something, that's why my ass hurt, but clearly it ended up being something more. So what advice would you give to someone who's maybe experiencing something that's not right, but doesn't really know if they need to go to a doctor for it either? What advice do you have?
I love that question. So my biggest thing is, which I wish I would have done early on, is make sure
Mm.
you keep a list. You keep a list of here are some things that you need to write down. When it happens, pay attention to the duration of how long that pain is.
Mm.
When it happened, like the specific date and the time. Because when you do finally go to a primary, these are the questions that they're going to ask you and they need to know. Well, how long are these pains lasting for? How many days are they lasting for? And what times of the month? Because then what they're going to look at is, okay, are these happening days or weeks before a period or after? How long these things are
Ah,
lasting for, and if there's a certain time of the day that it's happening, because then you can yourself turn around and look at what routine you're doing during the day and see maybe if it's linked
right.
to a food.
If it's being triggered by something. Yes. Okay. Oh, that's a good tip.
That I can say, please make sure that you keep track, because when you get a diagnosis, again, Black women, we're misdiagnosed all the time. So you really want to make sure that you have all your facts, because a lot of these symptoms do mimic each other. So you want to make sure that
Mm.
you are very specific, because it will eliminate a lot of different things.
You came through with the come through with that one. You really did. And what's crazy too is, guys, y'all know here on Period Sis, um, I try to keep it a little bit more edutained. So this is edutainment. I want you to be educated while also being entertained. But Coco has a very, very, very edutained Instagram page. And there's so many things for you to learn from her. And I also love that you are normalizing, like myself, these type of conversations. So Coco, can you let all of the listeners know where they can find you? If you're on YouTube, if you have a website, share, of course, your Instagram because you have so much knowledge there. Where can everyone find you and hear more from you?
So I do have a website. It's called theconversationalfreak.com. You could find me on Instagram at theconversationalfreak. I have a class called Oral Sex 2.0 that is happening June 13th at 8 p.m. If you really want to learn how to spend the night confidently, correctly, and snatch some souls, I will tell you stories about how I got flued out. But also, there is something that I am going to be doing, hopefully in July, called the WAP Challenge. But
Okay, can, can you share a little bit about that?
so it's actually women against painful periods. And what
I
it's going
love
to
it.
be, it's going to be a month of women coming into this challenge, really wanting to change their lifestyles, to start becoming very familiar with their bodies, to know, to start to see the changes happening so they can normalize. I know now where my vagina stands. So if anything down the line were to happen, I know, okay, this isn't normal, because I know what normal looks like for me. So I'm going to be
Mm.
sending out like partnership stuff to other people who want to like be part of it. Mandy, I'm gonna send you one too. But it's really
Say less. I mean, I don't know if you know, but I'm one of God's chosen few. So I have a 3 day period, and it be chill, bro. It be chill. But look. No, but what's crazy is, again, and we've talked about it. There's women that miss days of work. I remember so many of my friends missing days of school because of the painful period. So I'm definitely wanting to be a part of that somehow. In July, let's definitely see how we can be on board, and I want to promote that and get women to really figure out what a normal period is for them, 100%, because it shouldn't be painful. To be very fair, it should not be painful, and if it is, that's where we do need to figure out what could be the underlying. Yes, I love that you're doing that, Coco. I don't know if y'all can hear the finger snaps, but I love it. Well, all of that information will be in the description of this episode. Of course, stay tuned for some stats and facts after regarding endometriosis. I'm definitely going to share what some other symptoms may be, to where you could potentially see if those are what you're experiencing. So hopefully you can go and get the correct diagnosis. Coco, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it so much. And you have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful time with the rest of your weekend. And thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Period Sis. I'll see y'all with stats and facts in a little bit.